이제 본격적으로 세션을 진행해 볼까 하는데요.
Now we'd like to move on to our session. We have invited a speaker and two panels to talk about the changed investment list in the era of ESG. So we have invited Dong-Seop Lee, Head of Global Responsible Investment and Governance of NPS.
실장님을 무대 위로 모시겠습니다.
Let's ask him up to the podium with a big round of applause. Hello everyone, my name is Lee Dong-Seop. I'm the head of Global Responsible Investment and Governance at NPS. I'm really honored to have this opportunity to deliver my presentation before you. So I'll be talking about the responsible investments at the NPS. So to start off, I think it's safe to say that the responsible investment has grown in size. From March 2020, it has increased 20% year-on-year and has reached $103.4 trillion. We have more than 3,038 institutions which have become signatories of PRI. That is also as of March 2020. Again, a 28% increase year-on-year. Korea's NPS is one of the top 3 global national pensions. We are almost reaching 900 trillion won as of most recent figures. So if you look at the size, we're also big in terms of number of employees. We have about more than 341, close to 300 people directly involved in asset management. At NPS, we have a slightly different decision organization for the RI policies. We first have the Fund Management Committee, which is chaired by the Ministry of Health and Welfare, and they make the final decisions. The actual, more practical activities are handled by the different specialized organizations.
국민연금이 현재 하고 있는 책임 투자의 체계에 대해서 좀 간단히 설명드리고자 합니다.
So this is the overall system that we have at the National Pension Services Investment and Management in Korea.
잘 아시는 그 PRI가 가지고 있는 체계와 매우 유사합니다.
So we have a very similar structure to what PRI has. We have the ESG Incorporation part, which is divided into 3 large segments. We have the ESG Integration, where we talk about the benefits, the cash flows, multiples, risks, and benchmarks in making the investment decision. And we have ESG elements directly or indirectly being reflected into this process. So that is the ESG integration. If it's for equities, when you're selling or buying, you used to focus on their business environment, their financial statements. And now, investors are asking the companies to provide ESG-related reports. They're looking into multiples so that they can reflect these ESG elements in their decision-making. Currently, NPS applies ESG integration to domestic equities. The second element of ESG incorporation is the screening. Screening can also be divided into 2 segments. You have the negative screening and the positive screening. We have decided to introduce a negative screening at NPS. So basically this is looking at the industries and companies and evaluating them in terms of ESG. So this would be our strategy would be to eliminate companies and industries that are behind in terms of ESG. So that's the negative screening that we'll be introducing. The third part in ESG incorporation is the thematics.
이 테마 투자는 risk adjusted return, 그러니까
You have risk-adjusted returns
ESG 관련
plus ESG performance
아까 말씀드렸던
pursued at the same time.
목적이 장기 수익성과 재정의 안정성에 범위를 다소 넘어갈 수도 있는
So
것이냐라는 그런 의견.
we believe because this is risk-adjusted, it might not fit in with the NPS's goal of long-term stability and benefits. So at the moment, thematics are not adopted at NPS. So that was the ESG incorporation, and now we have the active ownership. Active ownership takes part once you have made the investment.
그 관리라는 것이 저희가 투자한 자산이 지속 가능성이 높아지면서
And we want to make sure that the assets that we have invested in will show sustainability, will continue to reap benefits for our purpose. We have two segments in here. One is related to the proxy voting. This is applied to domestic equities and overseas equities. The second leg is the engagement.
저희가 의결권 행사는 저희가 투자한 기업들에 대해서
The proxy voting, we do our best to make sure that we participate in the shareholders meetings to most of the invested companies that we have on our list, investment list. As for the engagement, we try to be as organized as possible so that we won't be sending out any misleading messages into the market. So we are much more cautious with our engagement activities. I'm going to cover them one by one in more detail in the following slides.
아까 말씀드렸던 것처럼 재무적 요인뿐 아니라 ESG 요인을 종합적으로 고려해서 운영력이 투자 의사결정 과정에서
So first, the ESG incorporation. In order for us to work on ESG integration, we first need to have the ESG evaluation. We have 2 regular ESG evaluations a year. We have installed an internal ESG system which will be used by our experts, and they will be looking into the different ESG features. This isn't actually something entirely new, not just at the NPS, but anyone who manages assets have already been broadening their scope when they were looking into their investment targets. They weren't just looking at the financial sheets only. So I would just say that NPS has been moving a bit faster in terms of introducing a systematic structure to this evaluation. So with the ESG integration, we require an ESG evaluation report. So this is a mandatory report that we ask our fund managers to attach to their decisions. Also, when we have a company who has recorded, we actually have a 6th level grading for the companies. Those who get a C or a D grade is regarded as a company or investment target that needs to be put on our core watch list. Companies who receive a D grade will not be allowed to have more investments made to them that would exceed the BM level. As you can see on this chart, we have 52 evaluation indexes that we use in 13 different evaluation categories. So this is a moving, evolving list or index. as relative laws are enacted or as discussions in the industry evolves, the indexes and the evaluation items will also be updated as necessary.
선별 투자, 그러니까 스크리닝에 대해서 좀 말씀드리고자 합니다.
This slide talks about selective investments. An example that we would like to give you is our recent statement to move out from the coal industry. So last May of 2021, we have
그 내용 중에 핵심은
presented a statement that we're going to no longer be investing in the coal industries. If you look at the fourth paragraph, we stated that in connection with the climate changes and the international environmental regulations that are taking place around the world, the NPSIM declares the operations or management principles of stepping away from the coal industry. So this is a preemptive measure that we are taking to manage the risks on our asset management. And as a preparatory measure,
규모가 900조 원에 육박하기 때문에 해외에서는 뭐 크게 영향이 없을 수도 있지만 저희가 국내 자산을 투자함에 있어서는 상당한 영향이 있을 수 있습니다.
we have a significant impact in the domestic investments. So we don't want to startle the market too much. So we have set up a task force that will look into the scope, the impact, the criteria that we will be applying to which companies we will be excluding from our investment list, while minimizing the unnecessary shockwave to the market with our almost close to 900 trillion won pension fund size.
의결권 행사와 관련해서는 좀 짧게 하겠습니다.
This page explains the proxy voting system
보유 비중이 0.5% 이상인 기업에 대해서
that we have.
저희가 의결권을 행사하고 있는데요. 그 의결권 행사는 이미 행사의 기준에 대해서도 좀 고민이 많으실 텐데 그게 그 근본 틀은 그겁니다.
So basically this page states
또는 그 주주 가치의 훼손 또는
that if
기업 가치의
a company
방향이라면
is moving in a direction where the stakeholders' values will be damaged,
되는 방향이라면 반대하는
then we will be voting against the company's decisions.
저희가 투명하게 의결권을
And also, if the company is moving towards better ESG activities, then we will be voting for the company.
이제 인게이지먼트에 대해서도 좀 설명을 드려야 되는데요. 이게 저희가 인게이지먼트는 사안을 정확히 정해놓고 있습니다. 그래서 저희가 이걸 중점 관리 사안이라고 해서 현재 5가지의 사안에 대해서 저희가
This page talks about the list of our core watch list items. So if a company has not set up a clear dividend policy, then we will add them to their core watch list. Now, we're not saying a company should provide more dividends to its shareholders. We're just asking for a very clear policy on how their dividends are made out to the shareholders. Another issue that we look on our core watch list is whether the management's compensation is set at an appropriate or adequate level, not being too excessive. And also, is the company involved in any illegal activities, any embezzlement that would damage the company's values or the shareholders' values. The fourth focused management issues would be on issues where the NPS has repeatedly voted against the company's decision but has not seen any improvements or corrections being made on the part of the company. But of course, this process will come after we continuously communicate with the company and engage them so that they can move in the direction that we see is more desirable. And also, at the last point would be any issues where any companies where the ESG evaluation results have dropped or slided.
19년에는 국내 주식 위탁운용의 책임투자형 위탁펀드를 운영을 물론 이전부터 해와서 그렇게 좀 시작을 했고 국내 주식 직접 운용의 액티브 쪽에 ESG 통합 전략을 적용해 오다가
So we have been applying
패시브 운용 직접 운용 패시브
the passive
통합 전략을 적용
policies
21년
with the
저희가 지금 열심히 준비하고 있는데
responsible investment.
해외 주식 직접 운용
So you'll see here on this chart where we have different like domestic equities, direct management, active, domestic equities, direct management, passive, and so forth, and how we have applied the ESG integration strategy year by year, and what our plans are for expansion in the year 2022. So as you can see, more than 50% of our assets under management will be directly under the ESG integration strategy.
저희가 직접 운용하는 자산도 많이 있지만
We have many funds that are being directly invested or managed by us, but we also have quite a lot that is being that is under outsourced fund management.
저희가 직접 운용하는 쪽은 아까 말씀드렸던
So for the direct fund management, we'll be applying our ESG integration strategies. But for the outsourced fund management, we need to look at the outsourcing firms. So when we decide on the outsourcing fund management firms, we need to make sure that that outsourcing company has their own ESG policies that is in line with the NPS's activities. So we've listed all of that in detail and have made it mandatory for our outsourced firms, outsourcing fund managing companies to comply with the ESG-related strategies at NPS. Other than the outsourced fund management companies, we also work with stock brokerage companies. And again, when we select the securities firms to work with, we also ask that they present their ESG plans.
증권사에는 이제 애널리스트들이 많이 계시는데 그런 분들이 기업들을 분석하실 때
When the analysts at the security companies look into their client companies, we're asking that the analysts also pay attention to the ESG activities of each investing targets. So again, this is a cascading effect that we would like to see from NPS to our outsourced fund managers and to our security firms that we work with. So those are the planned and also the implemented activities. So this was a brief introduction, explanation to what we are doing at NPS Investment Management to introduce more ESG activities. So basically, companies who are not working on improving their ESG activities will in the long run be at a disadvantage in getting the NPS's investments. So if the companies work on their ESGs and if the responsible investment becomes more active on our part and also on the part of the invested companies, I believe we will all be able to reap benefits. Companies who have more ESG activities and ESG investments, they will have more opportunities for getting their investments as well. So this would hopefully will create a virtuous circle in the industry. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for Lee Dong-seop from the NPSIM. Thank you very much. We have a lot of questions that has been presented in advance. So I'd like to take this opportunity to ask your future plans. What are your future plans for responsible investment for your overseas assets? Well, currently our main focus is on domestic equities, and as of end of this year, we will be coming up with a more detailed guideline, and we will be looking into applying the RI, responsible investments, to our overseas equities and overseas fixed income assets. We have 3 overseas offices in New York, London, and Singapore. And London is the leader at the moment in terms of responsible investments. So we'll be working with our partners in London first. We'll expand that activity to New York and our Singapore office as well. And we are working very diligently to prepare for that. So if we were to invite you back next year to this this forum, then we'll be able to have an update on that, right? That's good to hear. We would like to proceed with a panel discussion, and we're going to set the stage for that